For those of you that went to Devin's session, it was actually really good. I guess I should introduce myself. I'm GT Hill. Mine is very similar to Devin's in the sense that this is not about Wi-Fi. It's how we act socially. So I'd say it's more of a social version. So they are lying to you and you are lying to yourself. The first is, I should hold a weight loss clinic. Why? Who laughed? That dude. The reason is because I study psychology and sociology as sort of a hobby, but I do not implement it in my own life. Just like I know diet and exercise is really good, right? I don't implement it like I should. So when I say these things, I don't want you guys to think that, okay, GT thinks he's all that and he doesn't fall prey to this. I do, all the time. This is just, I try to be more aware of what happens and then try to fix it within myself. So I got started down this path because I love poker and I love women. I grew up playing poker. I was actually I went to state chess tournaments every year, as I was a nerd at heart, right? So I went to state chess tournaments every year, but what we played was poker. When we weren't in the tournament, we played poker. I used to be a poker dealer, so I love it. As far as women goes, it's the same kind of story, except in high school, all the way through high school, I had no shot at a woman. So, I started studying. I actually came across a book called The Game. I've been married 16 years. So I had this book sitting in the living room, asking my wife, hey, would this work? She was like, definitely. So don't think I'm a terrible person too much. So I'm studying how to pick up women in front of my wife, so that's always a good thing. But so it takes me down this path, and poker is a psychology game. It's like chess plus psychology, understanding why people do things. So that's why I'm here and talking about these things, because this is the explorative process. The first is people lie to you. We all do. What is it like, if you spend 10 minutes with a person, you'll get 3 lies out of them? All of us, right? Myself included. It may be little. In the lie detection world, this is called deception detection. The first is, we're just going to go through a little list. The first one is, there's no perfect indication of a lie. You've read, okay, if someone's talking to you, I'm talking to Scott, and I'm like, dude, I'm really in shape. And then I put my eyes up to the right? Eye movement. A lot of people are like, okay, if they do that, that's a lie. There's no perfect thing that indicates a lie. There's no one body movement, there's no one word that indicates that someone is not telling the truth. So first off, whatever you read, make sure you know that part. The second is, if you're going to try to see if someone is lying. How many of you have children? My children love that I study this. They love it. So I do this with my children. I obviously know them well enough. I have a baseline with them. I know when they're telling the truth. My son got in trouble, so I'm in Texas, right? So I go to gun shows a lot. And at the gun show, I bring my son because it's a good man thing to do. And so I bought him a Ninja Star. Well, guess who has it now? The principal of his school. Long discussion. Dad, I really didn't mean to bring it. So that was a fun part in my life. I think she still has it. So establishing a baseline. If you're going to detect a lie in someone, you actually have to know them. I cannot walk up to anyone here, hey, say something, and me guess it, right? I'd be guessing at that point. So start with a baseline. Detecting a deception in somebody, number one, is actions. A good example of an action is how someone's face is. How many of you ever seen the show Lie to Me? Okay. I love the show. It's off the air now, but it's based on work by a guy named Paul Ekman. This photo is courtesy of him. And basically, your face will tell a lot. Now, all of us are like, well, I can have a poker face. But the interesting thing is there's these things called micro expressions that if I were to say, Keith, I love you, people, when they have some sort of internal reaction, there's a literal micro reaction that people have that is very difficult to control. And these are the facial things up here. So I went to paulekman.com and I went through his thing, and you actually have, if you want to be certified, it's a little cheesy, but if you want to be certified, you actually have to go through this, and they will flash an image in front of you for, I think it's 15 milliseconds or 30 milliseconds, and you have to tell what that emotion is. And you take this little test, what were they doing? So these faces are really hard to, these faces are really hard to fake. So when I'm playing poker, right? If any of you have ever played poker, the number one rule, well, the first rule, is you don't look at your cards until it's your turn. If I'm at a table playing poker with these guys, I don't care about my cards. I'm watching how you react when you see them. Right? There are these micro expressions of disgust, of contempt, of happiness, of anger that we all do. So those are just informational things to look for. So those are actions. Other actions are, it's kind of a game now. I was watching at home. I was watching, again, family time, watching the news, and A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez, was on there. He was talking about his baseball career, whether he's done these drugs, and he said, I should be playing baseball right now. The interesting thing is I paused it and I rewound it and I told my wife, I said, look at him. This is what he did. He said, I should be playing baseball right now. He was shaking his head no while saying yes. Your actions speak much more louder than your words. There's other good examples of that we'll talk about. The next one is your words. What do you say? What do you say? The words you use are indicative of whether you're lying or not. Here's a good example. What did he say? A lot of us, if you're not from the U.S., I'm sure you still recognize Mr. Bill Clinton. He was caught doing some things he probably shouldn't have been doing. And he said, I did not have relations with that woman. Distancing language. I love it. That woman. He didn't say her. He didn't say her name. He used that woman. He distanced himself from her, through his words. And in retrospect, it's very interesting in looking, when you see videos and such, and these people way better than me. And by the way, at the end, I have a little reading list if you're interested in these things. The best person in the world at lie detection is a lady named Janine Driver. She is phenomenal. And you go through these things, and she shows you situations like this, and it's quite amazing. So this is, how do you use this in your real life? I don't know, as parents, it works out okay. But it's just something to be aware of. I prefaced my whole thing. I don't want you guys to walk around and think I'm looking at you all weird and stuff. I'm not good at what I do, right? I'm not good at this. I don't just do this every day. I do it when situations come up where I think I may need to use them. And I'm terrible. I know this much. But part of this process for me and part of talking to you is for me to help further that process. So that's deception detection. The next piece is, in the part that's much, something I've worked on much more, is you are lying to yourself. This is my favorite. This first one is called pluralistic ignorance. I have seen this happen on Twitter with some people that are at this conference. It's not a bad thing. It's just the way we are. Pluralistic ignorance is thinking one thing, but afraid to go with perception of society. If I were to ask you some personal questions on your convictions and your feelings, you would say one answer. But the reality, what you think society thinks, is something different. Here's an example. In the 60s, a study was done about segregation. If I were to ask you at the time, what percentage of people in the South would think that segregation is appropriate? I bet most of us would probably answer with a really high number. The number, again, this is the 60s, not today, this is 60s. In real life, that number was closer to like 20%. Not maybe the 50 or something you would think that our perception would have. The study that if you get these books I'm talking about, I have no stake in these, by the way, it does a study of Princeton University's alcohol consumption. Princeton University had the second highest consumption of alcohol at an event next to the Indy 500. So there was a big problem on campus. You have this perception of alcohol usage. Well, what would happen is someone would come in as a freshman, Renee. So Renee comes in as a freshman, hears everybody saying that, man, you drink if you're here. So the social aspect is telling you, you should be drinking. But if I were to ask people individually, they're like, well, that's Princeton. I don't really need it much, but I kind of just go with the flow. That's pluralistic ignorance. That's one small piece of it. Is society thinking one thing, and since we think society thinks that, we start to do our actions differently. Some other examples. I talked about one in societal evolution. I talked about segregation. There are a lot of examples of this. As a presenter, one of the things you should never do as a presenter, I'll do it, why? Because I don't follow my own rules, is you talk about a really complex topic. If you've ever presented to a customer, which we all probably have, you have done this. How many of you have any questions? The room is dead silent, right? No matter where you're at, you're talking technical, and you say, how many of you have questions about this topic? Here's what you're doing, right? You're looking, Alex, you're looking around. She's looking here, looking here. It's like, I'm not going to ask a question. I don't want to be that person who asks a question. When you're presenting, professor, teacher, talking to customers in front of a room like this, people are afraid to ask questions. I didn't ever talk to Keith about this, but I wanted to talk about this specific thing on day one. I didn't know if it would help or not. I don't think we needed it because there's a lot of great people interacting here. But it's really important. So how do you fix that part? How do you fix this as a presenter? How many of you present in front of people? Here's how you fix it. Plant questions. Don't plant questions because you want to answer them. Plant them to break down this barrier. It happens all the time. I've taught since 2004. I actually taught starting Microsoft in 98. And once you get a couple of people start asking questions, the floodgates open. All of a sudden, this perception, this pluralistic ignorance of I'm dumb, I don't want to ask a question, starts to break down. And people start saying, oh, well, they asked a question. I respect you. You're smart. Maybe I can ask a question and be okay. So as a presenter, it's important to try to fix this. Number one, I started a conversation, a class. In fact, it was Chris is here. I started our newbie class at Ruckus. So we hire a bunch of SEs every year. I had a class. The first thing I talked about was pluralistic ignorance. I said, ask questions. Nobody is judging you. And I think that's the truth. So defeating it. Here's another example of pluralistic ignorance. How many of you have ever heard of the Bay of Pigs? A lot of us, right? I haven't. I read about it on Google or something. But this event, if you look at the history of the Bay of Pigs, there were people in the White House making decisions, and every one of them in the room thought it was the wrong thing to do. They thought it was wrong. They thought they were going about it incorrectly. But nobody wanted to stand up and say it. One of the ways I think you should defeat pluralistic ignorance is be the person that you think are not going to be liked in a meeting. They use other words in the books. Here's an example. I'll give you a personal example at Ruckus. We were in a product demonstration, about this many people, talking about a feature, and someone said, hey, what do you think of this? You guys think this is okay? The whole room was dead silent. Knowing what I know, I raised my hand. I said, this is crap. Right? We should think this differently. And then guess what happened right after that? A couple other people were like, yeah, I agree, this isn't good. But had it not been said by the butt in the room, the guy who was breaking all the rules, it wouldn't have gotten fixed. So be that person. It may not be in your personality type to do that, but say what you think. Speak up, ask questions, and get a conversation started. Have you ever left a meeting and then you're whispering to someone like down the hall and you're like, dude, I totally don't agree with what we just did. There's other people doing the same thing at the same time. Just say it, right? You'll actually be more respected for it. We're going to do a little experiment. So pluralistic ignorance is over. We're going to move on. So if you trust me, and I'm not going to do anything fishy, if you trust me, Julia doesn't believe me. All right, so we're going to split down the middle. This half of the room, I'm going to put up 2 PowerPoint slides that I don't want you to see. Okay? I'll show you later. So this half of the room, close your eyes. 15 seconds, 20 seconds max. All right, we're good? Those of you on the other side of the room. Oops, I've jumped ahead. Let's look at this. Okay, I want you guys to look at that. Then that one. All right, open your eyes. Other half of the room, please do the same thing. Okay, their eyes are closed. I want you guys to look at this. And this one. Okay, open your eyes, please. Now, each half of the room has seen 2 different sets of images. So I'm going to go through and show you what those images are that other people saw. So it's this one, and this one, and then these 2. Here's what's interesting. In an environment where you would not have been told, look at these items. I forgot. Which side of you looked at the briefcase in the business of these guys, right? You guys looked at that. If you were to be asked to negotiate right now, you would negotiate harder than that side of the room. Studies prove this over and over and over again. That when you're around business items, briefcases, pens, conference rooms, when you're in that environment, you guys will actually, 20 minutes later, let's say we're doing some kind of game and you're negotiating, you're playing Monopoly. You will negotiate harder than this side of the room. This side of the room saw normal things. Somebody flying a kite. Somebody that just got done hiking the top of a mountain. It invokes some emotion in you, but nothing really. This is called priming. Priming is awesome. There is no way to defeat it. It's not like I'm immune to this. Here's an example of priming. What do you guys think of? Hey, some of you think of Ruckus, right? But no, I mean, just take Ruckus out of this, right? But you think of a nice black dog. Some of you may think friendly, happy, good things, right? Smelly. Way to be negative. You think good, hey, happy dog. It's smiling. Dogs can do that. And then let's say you were to see a bee. Hypothetically. You're thinking, this is going to hurt? This is going to sting? Well, honey? Some people think honey. You think arrowhive, right? I like that Ronald put that together for me. So this is called priming. Now some of you, when I pick, I'm joking with arrowhive and ruckus there, but there is something to this. That priming is when we do things differently because of outside influences. But they're subtle. You cannot prime yourself. It's kind of like tickling, right? You can't prime yourself. But it's just so cool to see that people act differently depending on what they've been exposed to in the past. Now there's some controversial research if you go deeper into this, but here's an interesting example. A team did a study, and they had a team look at, normal people, look at normal images. Everything was fine. And they always have these studies be like, this is not the study, but actually it is. So they looked at these images. And then another set of people looked at images of the elderly, or things that represent old. And when they timed the 2 different groups walking down the hallway, the group that saw the elderly pictures walked slower. It's weird. Our brain is whack. We do weird things. Priming is starting to be used in advertising. In fact, advertising has known about it for a long time. It just never had a name. We had never had anything to call it. Product placement? Here's an example of priming in products. We all probably know that smell is the strongest memory. It invokes the strongest reactions in us. Did you know that Burger King has a smokestack on top of their building for a reason? That is advertising. They don't do it because they need to, just get smoke out. They could filter that. They could do a million other things. You don't see it at McDonald's. Burger King puts it out in the air. It invokes emotions in us. But you're not thinking Burger King, you're just thinking I'm hungry, and then you look for the nearest sign. Coca-Cola did it with the polar bear and the Santa Claus. It invokes feelings of niceness and warmness, and you start associating those things. So priming is important. I think about priming that if I'm in a situation where I want a certain reaction, I want to set up the situation to be positive. The room, the table, the way you dress. That's a whole nother one. I don't have anything on that. Do you guys know that if you wear something different, you will score higher on a test? If it has been proven multiple times, it's called enclothed cognition. If you wear a lab coat and are taking a test, you will score higher because you feel smarter. It's the craziest thing. Have you ever heard that if you're on the phone, for an interview, you should dress nicely for a phone interview? You will act differently. Crazy stuff. I don't know how we even think about this. Now you can use this for or against yourself. Again, you can't self-prime, but you can create environments. I like clean and neat. If I am around clutter, I can feel it. Almost feels like literally feel it. So what do? I need to make sure I have a clean house. It makes me think better. So that is self-priming. By the way, any questions? I don't even know where I'm at for time. Where are we going till? 5? Okay. Any questions, thoughts, comments? I mean, I probably can't answer any questions, but why is that? Start it. Come on, Keith. Break it. Break the pluralistic ignorance, man. What? Should I take my shirt off? Is that what you're saying? That would not be good for anybody. Oh, no. Yeah, no, that's great. How many saw the movie The Truth About Cats and Dogs? How many are proud of that? I watched that movie. It was a long time ago. Went to the movie theater to watch it. I think I had no children at the time. My wife and I should preface that. I didn't go solo. We watched this movie, Truth About Cats and Dogs, 15 minutes into it. Man, that's a terrible movie. You may have liked it. Blake raised his hand. He seems like When did I pick on you? Someone else picked on you? I'll pick someone else. Who wants to be picked on? John? All right, perfect. John? No, that's Yusi. Okay, John. You want to go to the movies? I'm just kidding, man. All right, so what would you do? You don't have to answer verbally. What would you do? You've gone into the movie theater. You're anticipating a good movie. Got your popcorn, got your drink. You sit down, 20 minutes into it. It's terrible. What do? Who said keep watching? Excellent. Okay, so Blake has one perspective. Blake said, I've paid. I've got 20 minutes invested. Kane is going to go wrestle the manager, which is that's a whole personality type discussion there. How many of you would just leave? Anybody just leave? This is ridiculous. Oh, man. Oh, you're sitting with two ladies. You're like, oh, Chris is so cute. You suck up, man. No, the answer is you leave and she can stay. That's the right answer. No. This is called the sunk cost fallacy. Sunk cost fallacy. This is my house. I'm actually coming out, going public with this, on video saying it. So some of you know this already. I own a Titan II nuclear missile silo. Weird dude, right? You guys are already thinking, okay, what personality type is conspiracy bastard? How much should I pay for it? That's kind of personal, man. No. I paid 90 grand for 9 acres. It's not bad, right? You get a $13 million facility underneath of it. Does it still have the missile? Yes. Where do you live? No, I don't. So I own this, right? This is my chance to tell my ridiculous story, right? So I own Titan II nuclear missile silo. It was decommissioned in the 80s. Now, what happened, if you remember the 80s, I was still young at this time, the SALT Treaty, Strategic Arms Limitation something. So basically the idea was Russia and the US, it wasn't treaty. The T is not treaty, that's funny though, it isn't. So both the Russia and the US are like, look, 400,000 nuclear missiles is a bit much. Well, I don't know, some high number. So we're gonna make it less, so we can only destroy just the main surface of the Earth. So the idea was to decommission them. The Titan IIs got decommissioned. 10 years later, the US gave them back. By the way, in the 60s, they bought them from the people, meaning we're going to take your property and compensate you with a few dollars. So they gave them back to the descendants and first right of refusal. I ended up buying this thing. So I bought it, and when you buy one of these, this one in particular, they are not opened. They're completely buried. The only thing you can look for is a couple little pieces of concrete to know where you're at. So we dug this thing open. So here's me and my buddy. Now this is 35 feet underground. So I wish I could show you the video. If you want to see it, we'll do it sometime. It is quite interesting. So this is the front door. The front door is 6,000 pounds, and it's got 1 million gallons of water behind it. And it's got a lock. One of the pins, this door is locked by those huge locks you see on TV, ka-ching, and it can't be opened. So it's locked, and we need to pry it open. So this is me and a friend of mine. So we're in the bucket of this big cat excavator, and we're prying on it while the excavator is pushing on the door. So what happens next is I almost died. So the what's that? I need that picture. Yeah. 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 So my buddy, I'll show you the video. My buddy actually started shaking his head like, no, this is not going to work. And bam, this thing came unleashed. Well, the idea is that the bucket of the excavator was going to hold it closed. We would see it move, and then we would gently figure out what to do from there. It pushed that excavator back like 6 feet. So we're going to do a physics lesson next on pressure of water. Yeah. And it's only nuclear water, so it's not like it's bad. So this is my sunk cost fallacy. This is, I started this 3+ years ago, opened it up. Why? Because it seemed like modern archaeology, seemed cool. I'm a type 7. If you look at the type 7 that Devin talked about, it's adventure and experience, and that's totally me. Why did I want to do it? I'm actually not that dude that just wants to live underground and thinks the whole world's going to end, but I love the idea of someplace I don't have to air condition and chicks dig it, right? So I bought this thing and thought it would be kind of fun. So this, again, it's my sunk cost fallacy. I have constantly tried to review, is what I'm doing make financial sense? There have been times that if I was objective, probably should have just left it. Even today. So there may be a missile silo or a Southern woman available. One or the other. Either my wife or the missile silo, or both, if any of you are interested. No. So that's what you don't want to get in the trap of doing. How does this apply to us in our personal lives? How many of you have ever been up against a competitor? With the customer, they say, we've already got so much of this, we can't stop now. It ever happened to any of us? Frustrating. I mean, it's tough sometimes because it's not that, and a lot of times, even if you're objective, you're like, it's not that the product they bought, it just isn't ours. It's not right for the customer. And you're trying to tell them this. Now, I have no advice on how to bring up sunk cost fallacy to your prospective customer. I have no idea how you bring that up. But just understand that is the psychology behind the actions that they're taking. That's what we all do. If we're going to stay in that movie theater, it's a sunk cost fallacy. We're going to continue to throw good money or time after bad. This can apply to relationships. You ever been in a relationship? You're like, I can't go now. I've already gone into it 3 years. I haven't. That's just, I don't think that. I have friends. Oh, I thought you were pointing at somebody like. Sometimes you have to think that. You have to self-evaluate, and sunk cost is one of those. BMW versus Audi. Ferrari versus Lamborghini. Apple versus Android. I think I'm a huge BMW and Ferrari guy. I think they are better. I think the BMW is better than Audi. I think that the Ferrari is better than the Lamborghini. The other piece of information, though, is I've never driven an Audi. I've never driven a Lamborghini. Why am I making these judgments? I still do, even though that I know about this. Why am I making these judgments when I don't actually even know? We do this in our world, right? Whether it's Wi-Fi equipment, the phone that we carry, the computer that we own, we do this. It's called brand loyalty. Brand loyalty is why we have fanboys, why some of us, maybe including myself, are. I'm a BMW fanboy. But why do we do this? Why do we talk about things that we, as fact, that one thing is better than the other without all the information? I do this, right? I do this. I still, to this day, think that BMW is better than Audi. I have no information whatsoever to prove that. I don't even have experiences to prove it. But I say it over and over again. Just understand, and this is something that's important to me. I try to be objective. I work for Ruckus, you guys know that. When I am with a customer, I try to be objective. I do my best. I'm not perfect at it. I try to understand that there are other perspectives. When we are thinking about these things, we are not trying to change a person's mind. Keith, Android is so much better than Apple. Why are you still on iOS? Am I going to change his mind? No, I'm not going to change his mind. By the way, I don't believe that. No, I think, I think there's good things about both, right? That's the objective side of me. The unrational side is I've had an iPhone and I don't use much else right now. But I don't feel so passionate about it that I feel like I need to defend my own beliefs. Just understand that when you defend things, when we defend things, a lot of times we are doing it because we are defending our own choices. We have chosen this. I chose this phone. It's not toilet paper, it's not gas. It's not things that I have to have. How many times do you get in an argument about what toilet paper you use? Or what gas you put in your car? A little bit maybe, right? Dudes do that. But when it's choices that we have to make, we defend those choices because we feel like we are being attacked. When someone says, I chose X over Ruckus, I take that personally. But I have to think very hard and objective that I understand that someone else made those choices for very good reasons. There's a lot of good products out there. So just understand that a lot of the fights that we get into or tend to get into are because we're defending our own choices. We're not actually trying to convince somebody. You can make the same argument for religion, right? We're trying to reinforce our beliefs because I probably can't change your religion in a conversation. How many times have you ever seen that happen? Man, that guy was good. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be this now. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. What do you guys think about Fox News? How many of you watch Fox News? It's okay to admit, right? Remember? Pluralistic ignorance? It's fine. What if I said CNN? How many watch CNN? MSNBC? Okay. You can tell someone's political affiliation by the channel they watch. Because they're fair and balanced? No. The question was, how does that work with CNN? Everybody who reports the news has a skew. It doesn't feel like it, but they do. Why? Because they're people, right? When you write something, when I write a marketing document, I may leave out certain important features that Aruba may have, Maybe I'm just telling one side of the story. So yes, there are some things that are very factual yes, there's no bias involved. My father-in-law, great man, love the guy. You walk into his house, this is what's on TV. Fox News. So you already know he's a conservative, right? Probably Republican. So you know things about him because of that. I challenge him. I'm using him on video, and I've challenged him personally to not watch it. Not because I think his political affiliations are wrong, but because of confirmation bias. We associate ourselves with things that tell us that we're smart. They tell us that we're right. President Obama, number one purchaser of his books were people that liked him. You're like, well, of course, that makes total sense. But really, wouldn't you, even if you don't like someone or a president or a figure, why would you not want to learn about them? The same thing goes the opposite way. This is not Democrat, Republican, this is not political. But confirmation bias is that we associate ourselves with things that tell us we are right. So what I tell my father-in-law is watch MSNBC. Tends to be more liberal. Is that bad? Absolutely not. I don't care. But you have to learn the other side. How do we apply this? How do we apply that? If you work for Arrowhive, consider the possibility a controller may actually work. I'm just saying. And if you work at Ruckus, an omnidirectional antenna may actually send signals still. Right? It can go both ways. And this is why I like working with the people I do. Is Marcus here? Marcus, great objective guy, right? We have these conversations. When I put myself in the shoes of the customer, I have to think about the good things that they are hearing from my competitors. I can't think about the bad things running through my head. I have to know what they've heard. If I'm going to get into an argument with someone of an opposite political affiliation than me, I better know about them. I cannot just regurgitate what I saw on TV, on my news channel. I have to hear the other side. And in any topic, we have to educate ourselves in that. You have to try to put yourself in the position. For me, I work at Ruckus. I have to think, is controllerless a good architecture? Yeah, I can see tons of positives in it. How hard is that to admit and to say? Not at all, because I try to maintain that objectivity. And once I'm there, then I will start figuring out, are there any negatives? Once I've accepted it, I'm going to move on and see, is there anything that maybe a controller can do that it can't? And vice versa. These are all things that we should consider. How many of you have just bought a new car? Actually, who just bought a new car? What'd you get? Back there. Huh? Toyota anything? They're kind of plain. A Versa? Versa, what is it? Cross something? 7 seats. You have a big family, you said? Do you know what caused that? Okay, so Toyota, anybody else? Chris, you got a new car? Dodge Challenger, it's a good car. BMW 335, it's a great car, twin turbo, nice choice. Now you're pissed because you're driving around, you're like, dude, that guy got the same car as me. That happens, doesn't it? You buy a new car, and all of a sudden you're seeing all of them. Every car you see is the same. You're like, that's my car. You've lost this identity. How many times you met a girl or a guy? You're like, man, I've got lots in common. Our mothers have the same name. They were born almost in the same year, right? We like the same things. Well, yeah, it's because you're probably, although not recommended, picking up on a girl who's your same age. Should try younger. My wife was at the coffee shop today that's right next to a college. And she said, I'm at this place. And I said, well, just make sure you pick the right college guy. She said, haven't found one that caught my eye yet. So it goes both ways is what I'm saying. I'm not the only guy that's bad here. So you start to realize things, you start to put these things together that makes sense to you. This confirmation bias. You start to see things align when they really were always there. There's another interesting one. Ever heard of the Texas sharpshooter fallacy? Since we're in Texas, I don't have slides on it. Just remember it. The story goes, if you haven't seen this, I can't repeat it properly, but what was it? Kennedy and Lincoln both had, like, Kennedy was driven in a Ford and or in a Lincoln, and he was killed in the Ford Theater, and they had like the same assistant's name, and you do all of these things, you're like, my goodness, this is the craziest, this is fate. But really, the Texas sharpshooter fallacy, the idea of it is, let's say you take a gun or a bow and arrow and you shoot a whole bunch of holes in the side of a barn. And then you walk up to it and you look at the concentration and you paint a target there. Look how good I am. Have you ever heard of cancer clusters? Areas of the U.S. that have more cancer than others. It is statistical impossibility that it's distributed evenly. If there was a distribution evenly, that is actually the problem. That would actually be weird. So these things that gather around, these things that look like they're perfect, happen all the time. We just don't realize it, right? We don't realize that that's what's actually happening. We are seeing things in reverse. How to break this confirmation bias. Challenge your own beliefs by exposing yourself to things that you don't normally do. I am more conservative as a person, fiscally conservative, socially a bit liberal. I try to look at things from a different perspective so I understand people's perspective. I have the same beliefs at Ruckus. I think Ruckus is pretty good, but I understand other perspectives. So this is sort of the bibliography here. This is the last slide. This is where I recommend you start. If you want to learn more about these things, the first book you should start with is You Are Not So Smart. This guy, David McRaney, actually had a blog, still has a blog, youarenotsosmart.com, ended up writing a book. This book has 25 short stories about what the things I just said. I mean, tons and tons of them. And I think every human should read it. I think it should be the handbook for your brain. Because your brain, we do weird stuff, and we may not be able to fix it, but at least you're aware of it. The second book is You Are Now Less Dumb. This guy's pretty creative, I think. I love his writing style. He's very good and concise. You can read these stories very easily. I talked about Janine Driver. Again, she's a lie detection expert. She gives classes on lie detection. She does consulting work for every major organization in the U.S. for how to do it. And she is amazing in the work that she does. To be able to sit down with somebody and get all this information from them just by what they say and how they act. Emotions Revealed is that one I told you about, facial expressions, physical body movement in order to detect deception. Again, all interesting stuff. I recommend these. I wish I could just give them to you, but I can't because I don't have as much money. I spent it on a missile silo. So that's it for me. We have a few minutes. Any questions? Comments? Oh my goodness, you can ask me about that thing. How deep is the missile silo? It is the part that we're in, about 65 feet underground. The silo itself is 180. That's a $500,000 additional project that I may never get to. The silo is, my part isn't. If you guys come to Arkansas, just come on in. We can walk down there and go around and chill out down there. Yeah, just rainwater over time. Just water. What's that? Well, they also filled it full of gravel and they put a 600-ton lid over the top of the silo. So, other engineering things I like to try to figure out. And if that doesn't work, there's always explosives. All right, if there are no other questions, thank you very much. Love you guys. We'll see you next time.